Avengers Age of Ultron doesn't get enough credit for how good this movie actually is. Like, sure, it's hard to follow up the first Avengers movie. You'll never be able to recreate that magic of seeing all our beloved heroes team up for the first time. But I would actually argue that Avengers Age of Ultron has the most difficult position of all Avengers movies in the MCU, because it's like right in the middle where it has to honor so many things that came before it and set up so many things that come after it. And it did an amazing job at setting all that up, which I think many of us back then, we couldn't quite yet appreciate how many future MCU movies Avengers Age of Ultron set up. And while doing all that, it still managed to tell an exciting story and further develop our beloved characters. So if you think that Avengers Age of Ultron isn't that great, then here I got 3 scenes that will hopefully convince you otherwise. Let's get into it. And the first scene I want to start with is actually the opening scene to this movie, because I think it's incredibly well crafted and it's easy to miss how great this scene is if you just look at the action, because it's more than that. But yes, let's start with that. It's an amazing action set piece, and I love that we start right in the action with all of our Avengers working together. And it's just like another casual day, and they have that amazing one-take style, which is actually the first one-take style shot in the MCU at that point. And I love how it showcased every individual Avenger, giving each Avenger their little moment, their little highlight in that one-shot style. And it's a great way to start the movie in the action, high momentum. Yeah, so that is great. But the opening set piece has so much more to offer. Like, just to name a few, it shows how Hydra was experimenting on the alien tech we saw in the first Avengers movie, which I think is a great tie into that and just great continuity. But it also features the Loki scepter, which we later find out houses the Mind Stone. So this is like the first Avengers movie that mentions the Infinity Stones, which is super cool. It also sets up the Iron Legion, which is like the blueprint for the Age of Ultron concept to work, where Ultron can manufacture many AI Iron Man suits. And it also sets up the twins, where one of the twins later becomes an Avenger. It sets up how Hulk is learning to control his powers even more, where he cools down, and the sun's getting real low with Romanoff, which is important later for the movie and also gets referenced in other movies, like for example Thor Ragnarok, which I think is hilarious. And it shows us Tony Stark's vision, where all his friends were dead and he was the only one that was left alive, which is like the crucial setup for him to work on Ultron. But also is kind of, I like how it in the end turns out in Endgame that not he's the only one is alive and all his friends are dead, but actually most of his friends are alive and he's the one that ends up making the sacrifice play. So I love all those setups and all that just in the opening scene. So that's really great. And the second scene that I think is absolutely great, and I love that we got that scene, is how all the Avengers are chilling together and try and lift Thor's hammer. It's a simple scene, and it's, there's no crazy visual effects, and you would think that it's a scene that could easily get cut because not much is happening in that scene at first glance. It's like just the Avengers chilling around. But I love that we got that scene because, of course, it has some important setups for later in the movie and later in the MCU, but also, putting that aside for now, I love seeing these characters feel real. Like, that's what I think this movie does exceptionally well. All the Avengers in this movie, they feel real. They feel like real people and not just like those comic book superhero movies or just like the typical superhero. No, they feel like real characters and they're friends by now. So of course, although they're the Avengers, they're just gonna chill in the evening, have a drink, have a laugh, and try lifting Thor's hammer. So I love that. I love the dialogue. But then, of course, getting into, the setup or why this scene is so important, although it seems so unimportant at first glance. Of course, you all know Cap in this scene tries and lifts Thor's hammer, and it actually moves just that slight bit. And while it's a funny scene because of how Thor reacts, It's also really cool that we get that as a setup for the scene in Endgame when when Captain America actually lifts Thor's hammer, which is like, that scene in Endgame is even cooler because we got this setup in the second Avengers movie. And then of course it's also important that we get this scene about them struggling to lift Thor's hammer, which is the setup for an amazing scene later in this movie when Vision suddenly lifts Thor's hammer.
But we need to go.
And the third scene that I think is absolutely brilliant in Avengers Age of Ultron is Hulk versus the Hulkbuster. It's an easy scene to forget about, I guess, or not forget about, but forget how great it is and how great it was that we actually got this scene in the movie, because it's not the final fight scene of the movie and it doesn't matter that much in the grand scheme of the story or the plot of Age of Ultron. But I think that makes it even cooler that we got that scene of Iron Man fighting the Hulk. And it's definitely, you shouldn't forget about it because it's absolutely amazing. And did you actually know that this was at the time one of, if not the most, I'm not entirely sure, but definitely one of the most expensive visual effects fights in the MCU? And it definitely shows, like, the visual effects in this scene are absolutely, I would say, flawless. I don't know what could be better about the visual effects in this scene. And just the entire scene as a whole is, I think, perfect fan service. Like, it's those moments where you're in theater and you're just having a good time. Like seeing Hulkbuster versus Hulk brought to life in such an amazing way. It's absolutely awesome. And I love how we get like Veronica that gives Tony like spare parts, because of course Hulk would start and destroy the Iron Man armor. And then there's not only cool moments in the fight, but it's also funny. Like, we get that Robert Downey Jr. or Tony Stark humor in it. Like, it's absolutely awesome.
Go to sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep.
So those are the three scenes why I think Avengers Age of Ultron is a lot better than many of you remember. And while I'm also of the opinion that you'll never be able to recreate that magic of the first Avengers team up, so subjectively I also enjoyed the first Avengers more, but I think objectively speaking, just comparing these two movies, I think Avengers Age of Ultron could objectively actually be the better movie. Do you agree with that statement? Let me know in the comments below, and hopefully I'll see you in the rest of my MCU revisit. Bye.